Hi, welcome to another edition of the Women in 3D Printing Youth Webinar Series. Women in 3D Printing is a global organization dedicated to promoting, supporting, and inspiring women who are using additive manufacturing technologies. Our mission is to increase the visibility of women in the additive manufacturing industry and encourage more women to use 3D printing technologies. My name is Sanjana Narayanan, and I will be your host. I am a junior at Mission San Jose High School in Fremont, California, and the Youth Ambassador for Women in 3D Printing. I aspire to bring awareness about the various uses of additive manufacturing to students using the webinar series. When I was first introduced to 3D printing, I was surprised to learn about the application of the technology to a variety of industries, ranging from automotive to culinary sciences, and even medicine, my personal field of interest. Through the webinar series, I hope that other students like me can explore 3D printing in a field they are passionate about. The Youth Webinar Series is sponsored by XD Innovation, a Dassault Systems partner. XD Innovation focuses on 3D digital workspaces for collaborative and computer-aided design for product development. Our guest today is Anne-Marie Shillito, founder and CEO of Anarchic 3D. Anne-Marie is a freelance designer and jeweler, published author, and SMART Award winner for digital crafts, industrial technologies for applied arts, and designer makers, and fellow of the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacturers, and Commerce. Her company, Anarchic 3D, develops haptic 3D software that allows designers to manipulate models in 3 dimensions, especially feel and touch. Hi, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, Sanjana. Nice to be here.
So let's go ahead and jump right in. So I've seen some of the very beautiful jewelry pieces that you've 3D printed using your 3D modeling software. And in your experience, how do 3D platforms allow for more creativity in your design?
Well, I come at this very much from the art side. And one of the things that I really do stress is that you need a really good model, digital model, to be able to do a good 3D print. And Jo Summers that you had on earlier, she said about teach writing, not pens, and also teach 3D design, not 3D printing. And I think that is, I put that up there because I think that is really important to focus on. I became CEO really of Anarchic 3D because we wanted to produce a very accessible 3D modeling program that artists could use, because artists actually struggle to use CAD. I struggle to use CAD, and I can talk about that later on. So I use our software, and this is the interface, to actually design my jewelry now. And you can see that the interface is very straightforward. There's only one pop-up menu, and what you see basically is what you get. But just like a pencil, you know, it's not complex. And just like a pencil, you can actually produce a lot by going into it in depth and really building up that sort of skill. So one of the earliest pieces I did was in the next slide, and this is a ring that is the wedding and engagement ring that my daughter basically commissioned me to do. And she wanted titanium. And at this stage, I was developing arthritis in my thumbs, which meant it was going to be really difficult to work actually in titanium. But within a few weeks of her commissioning me, I materialized when then going to print titanium for anybody rather than just the dental industry. So I then designed this ring. The gold part was made by a goldsmith, and she also set the diamond. I designed it, and I got the major part of the ring 3D printed in titanium. And because most of the work was done, I managed to sort of finish it. So that was one of the earlier pieces using our software. Okay, so the next slide it shows some earlier pieces that I did, and I am particularly keen on color. So you can sort of see these pieces have all got an element of color that is built into it. And we're going to talk about that right at the end of this session, about some of the software issues that you need for being able to print in color now. The next slide is a range of work that is polyamide and it's dyed. So except for the metal ring and the ring on the left, which is black, all the rest is polyamide and it's been dyed. And these are like a commercial range. So I do sell these pieces of work. So on the top line is the rings, including one in metal and one in so much more rubber. The black one is rubbery. And then on the bottom line, there's a necklace, earrings, and I'm wearing earrings as well. So those are dyed. And again, it's a commercial company. It's Shapeways that, and I materialize that I get these done through them. So the next slide is another range of work that I've been working on. And again, color, lots of color. Some of it is in sandstone, where the dye is actually printed into the top layers. There's also paper there, which is MCore, their system, and the color is printed actually into the paper, and it then goes in and it's cut and layered. And this is a range of rings where you have a metal shank, ring shank, and you actually slide that into different tops, so you can actually change the tops. And the next slide actually shows you a range that is like that. It uses the same shank, but you've got two parts to the top. So if those are printed in different colors, you can mix and match. And again, this is a commercial range as well. So that's dyed polyamide. And again, produced for me by commercial companies. And that next slide. Oh yes, the next slide. Yeah. So this is getting into really using the 3D printers that print in color. So the bee brooch, yeah, I kind of wanted to try and get some subtlety as well. So to be able to 3D print something that is fairly robust, because the problem with sandstone is it's brittle. And the paper, you can't get the sort of detail in that I would want, say, like with the bee, it would just not be possible. But a new material became available for commercial people like myself to use in the service companies. So I got a sample printed. I had a commission to do a bigger brooch, and I printed that out. It did go backwards and forwards a number of times, trying to get exactly the right strength, as well as the visual side that I wanted. So that's the bee brooch. And then the one on the other, I did a tutorial video about how you can really make something very colorful and using some of the functions in our software. And I decided that I would actually 3D print the results of that demo session into a piece. And again, this is using this new material that was introduced. I think it probably came in about 2018. And you can see it's pretty colorful. Yeah. So that's again made into a brooch, and it's something that I will get up and cost it and be able to sell it. So yeah, I'm looking really at now sort of producing commercial ranges of jewelry. Yeah.
And I see that you approached 3D printing from an artistic side. So could you tell us more about your first introduction to the technology?
Well, let me just tell you about these pieces, right? So since we've been in lockdown, I set myself a project. I'm quite fortunate because I have an Ultimaker 3D printer here in the office, and I wanted to 3D print onto fabric. But with lockdown, it's been actually quite hard to be able to go out to the shops and buy different sorts of fabrics to experiment on. But I did have some lace that was in my sewing box. So I've been 3D printing onto lace. So
wow.
Again, using our system to design, and then basically going into Cura and slicing it, but putting in where I want it to stop so I can put the lace in, and then to continue 3D printing. So
very interesting.
That's how I've produced those two pieces.
Nice.
Right, so the next piece, really, we can go back to how I got into 3D printing. Yeah?
Yes.
So the material that I used a lot as a jeweler is titanium and niobium. And titanium is not an easy metal to work. It's quite hard to cut. And I was looking at ways that I could produce it in series or in limited quantities. And I had some funding to actually go and look at the possibility of laser cutting titanium and niobium in the quality that would be needed for jewelry. So these three brooches are one of the pieces that came out of that initial research project to laser cut, and I had to learn CAD. Okay, so I was at a university part-time with my research. They were supporting me, and it was the engineering department. So it's quite strange being an artist in an engineering department, because I would do things and the engineering students would stand behind me and so say, "You can't do that." I go, "But I've just done it." So it was I really enjoyed being able to play, and sort of out of that I actually did learn CAD reasonably well, and I did produce quite a lot of work that was laser cut titanium, laser cut perspex, commissions and commercial pieces. And these three brooches are one of those in my portfolio that is a range. So there's also earrings as well as cufflinks and tie tack. So that's niobium on the top, which is anodized, and titanium is the frame. So you can see how much I like color. Yeah,
really definitely. They're very beautiful.
So that was the laser cutting. So the next slide, this one, is the first 3D printed piece that I had. Now, I'd heard about 3D printing in 1990, and it just was incredibly expensive. You know, the software was very expensive. Just to have something 3D printed, again, I couldn't afford it. But I managed to get onto a research project that was run by a university because they wanted to get artists into 3D printing. But they said to me, "But you're not an artist, you're a craftsman, you're a jeweler." And I said, "Yes, but I desperately want to 3D print." And I said, "Also, jewelry is ever so small." So I said, "All right, yeah, we'll sneak you onto the program." So I then started trying to learn 3D CAD. And this is my first design. I was in a package that was called Perspectives. And this was about 1998, sometime around about then. And it's been 3D printed in ABS. And it's got three rings that are captured. And those rings will turn. And I'll show you the piece at the end of our session. But it's actually, I wanted to produce a piece that really showed what can be done in 3D printing that you can't do, or not easily, you can't do in other ways. So I thought having these captured rings, all of it 3D printed in a oneer, would be a good way of doing that. And then paint it in white ABS And then, of course, I paint it and I put gold leaf on it. So again,
Very
bringing
cool.
other skills into it as well. So then the next slide is the piece that I started doing as a research fellow, because I became a research fellow at Edinburgh College of Art. The reason I became a research fellow was I really struggled with CAD, with 3D CAD. 2D was fine. 3D I really found very, very hard. It didn't help me as an artist. I found it difficult to be creative. So I became a research fellow to actually find out why, and also if there was better programs for artists actually commercially available that were also accessible by being affordable, because artists aren't particularly wealthy. They're usually sole makers. They're not in a company. So, you know, they need to be able to justify the costs that they pay for their software.
Yeah.
And it was also, I had come across haptics, and I thought that was possibly a good interface into being able to navigate this 3D space where you're working with 3D CAD. So I pulled together a team and we applied for funding, and we got funding for 3.5 years for the two of us plus 2 research assistants to actually then look to see whether haptics was a good good interface for artists, designer makers, you know, people who wanted to work in a much more free way than you can with CAD. Because CAD is basically designed for engineers, for designing for mass production. Not really for how artists like to work, which is very individual. Yeah, you like to play. So the next slide. Yeah, so should I explain that one? So that part, that last piece was actually a coffee table, and it was designed using Rhino. I decided Rhino was one of the better CAD packages, but I still struggled. But you can see I did quite a complex piece, and that was really, I could understand what were the issues and what were the problems for people like myself with using CAD. So sorry to go back. Okay, so the next slide is just one of the studies that we did when we were using a haptics setup. Now, haptics means touch, and we were using a haptic device, which is desktop, and it gives you force feedback. So you can actually feel your virtual objects as 3-dimensional objects. So in the study that we had, we wanted to compare like a standard package, 3D modeling design package. So we used 3D Studio Max because we were in an art college as well to do this. We wanted to compare that with a haptic system that we had brought in from a company in Sweden. It was called Reach-In. So we prepared various studies and demonstrations so that we could actually compare these two. And so you'll see on the left-hand side of that graph, is it the left-hand side? I don't know which way around it is to what people are seeing. So you can see there's in that 3-dimensional graph at the bottom, sort of, what do you call it? Like a 3D-diagram. You can see like stalactites. And those were the clicks that the user did to actually do this quite simple, what we call it, exercise task. Quite simple. What you were just basically doing was taking an object and placing it onto a platform, but each platform was rotated a bit. So it was a matter of kind of, you know, using that 3D space and rotating objects and rotating world. So the one on the left is using 3D Studio Max, and all our users had between 2 years and 10 years experience using using that program. They then had to do the same task a number of times in this haptic system that we got pulled in from Sweden, which is interesting because you're also co-located and your haptic device has got 6 degrees of freedom.
Oh.
So you can move in 3 dimensions, you can rotate in 3 dimensions, and you can also touch your object in 3 dimensions. So you've got touch, 6 degrees of freedom. You've also got what we call co-location, which means that your object is actually floating where the haptic device is and where you're looking. And you also, I don't think with that one you can actually see, but you also had stereo vision, so you could see your object dimensionally. And you can see in the box below that just how much cleaner and how fewer clicks there were to actually do the same tasks.
Yeah,
so that was, go on.
There's a significant difference, yeah, between the two.
Yeah, it's huge, absolutely huge. So it was, you know, when we got that data back, we went, oh, you know, this is something that could really help with particularly something called flow. You know, when you actually get into something and there aren't things that are creating a disruption to your cognitive process. So that was, I put that slide in because it was really so significant within our research.
Definitely.
But we actually did like 3.5 years of research, 3.5 you know, years of actual academic studies. And then we had 2 years where we had what's called proof of concept. So we built a demonstrator and we brought in designer makers and they tried the demonstrator that we built, the haptic demonstrator that we built. And we actually looked at what they were doing, how they were working, all the rest of it. We also went out with the system and we did a road trip and we went to visit designer maker and companies and to get their feedback. And, you know, we did say to them, look, this is a very expensive system, but we just want to really know whether these principles that we've got of 6 degrees of freedom, touch, stereo vision, actually is something that, you know, you would see as quite a valuable way of working creatively. So we got really good feedback from that. And at the end of those 2 years, we spun out the company. And you can show the next slide because that is this is our company, Anarchic 3D. And the person who's demoing there, that's Xiaoxing Xiao. And she and I spun out the company together. And she's a computer scientist, but she's also got an artistic streak. So it was great working with her because she knew what I meant when I was trying to explain how artists work. So it was, I just so appreciated having her, the founder, with me. So yeah, so the first 2 years, we actually concentrated on working with the big companies because they could afford the expensive system. And then in 2000, let me just have a look, see what's the next slide. Yeah, so the next slide actually shows Haptic Devices. The expensive equipment that we had was the one actually that's on the right, and it's called a Phantom, and it costs about 12K sterling dollars. Expensive.
Wow. Yeah.
The one next to it is an Omni, and that was getting down. The price is coming down. It's about £1,000, $1,000. And the one on the far left is the newest one that came on the market. I think it came on the market about maybe 4 years ago. But the one that's the second from the left, that big beast, that is a Falcon. And it was developed by a company in Albuquerque. And it's a gaming machine. It's actually for gamers, so they get force feedback. when they are playing particularly first shooter games.
Mm-hmm.
We tried out a demo actually at SIGGRAPH when we were when it was held. I think it was in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
about maybe 2007. And we thought this was a possibility, and so we then got a Smart Award, and part of that Smart Award was then to test this Falcon device from Novint in Albuquerque, to actually test it to see whether it was suitable for designing. So yes, it was great for designing. So we then started actually building our own brand 3D modeling program.
Okay.
So that was around about 2008, and the first version came out about 2010. So that was using that device. Now, the difference with that one to the others is the Falcon is only 3 degrees of freedom, but the cost was a quarter of the Omni, and it just made our package that much more affordable. And that's one of the reasons why we went with it, because we could also, within the software, pull in the 3D rotation side, which is basically what we did. So the next slide shows the interface and the actual the package. So we do the software, and the software is called Cloud9, and that's our in-house name for it. And then there's the Falcon, which is from Novint, the haptic device, desktop haptic device. And we bundle those together and we call it Anarchic 3D design. As I say, we developed the software, and it's been an ongoing process. We're at version 3.1. Because artists and designers don't like to have to upgrade too often and have to learn new things, we tend to, with upgrades, to actually have quite a long period between upgrades. And we try and just enhance the program, rather than introduce too many new functions, because I think what we've done is we've built the best functions in right from the start. So it's been an interesting process working with programmers, being a non-programmer. But my skills as a maker, I've used to test and also to guide how the whole software was developed and built. So the programmers would come back to me and sort of say, right, we're going to do it this way. And I would say, no, but artists, designers don't work that way. It's like an illustration is like in CAD. When you want your object to come to, you want to actually work closer with an object, you actually move the camera to you. So this is your object, right? You actually move the camera to the object. Artists don't work like that. We just pick up the object and we bring it to us. So we change that whole thing round, so that with the haptic device, if you want the object to be further away, you just push it away. If you want it closer, you just pull it towards you. Something as simple as that actually made a huge difference to working more sort of fluidly for artists. CAD people find it difficult. Okay, so you saw what the interface was like from that very first slide. It's non-complex, but within that you've got a lot of depth as to what you can do, and particularly with things like Boolean subtraction and union and so on. But we've got all the standards like scaling. You can scale also non-uniformly, which is really interesting. You've got mirror, you've got slice. Got a good range of fairly straightforward functions and things within it. So the next slide actually shows you the work of other designers who are using our software. And you can see there's quite a range there of different styles. And that's kind of also one of the things that we wanted within our package, that people could pick up the way that they work, they're happiest working, or they can explore, experiment in their own way, try different functions. So you can see there is quite an array of different styles. And you know, if you go back to that ring that I did for my daughter, you know, there's that precision that can come into it as well. And you can see it's quite colourful as well.
Yeah.
So we you know, we sell our software. We've got some distributors, and we don't know actually then for our distributors who buys our software and where it goes to. But one of the things I do is I keep in touch with some of the artists who buy our software, and I ask, you know, if we can use their work to promote both them and our product. So I mean, this is the reason why I do have this range of work from other people.
Yeah.
And we run workshops so that artists can then start working with our product. And I think the next one is about workshops. Yeah. So the next slide is workshops that we do. So, and having an Ultimaker 3D printer has been really so valuable in our workshops, because you know, if you're going to design for a technique or technology, you actually need to understand its principles. So, you know, to have a 3D printer, desktop 3D printer that we can have running when we have workshops, and people can just see how things are built up in layers. We also take them into Cura so they can see about that process of slicing. And you know, it enables them to, because they understand the principles, and also because a lot of them are applied artists. You know, they know about making, they know about materials, and they can bring those, they can transfer those skills and knowledge into designing in 3D for 3D printing. So, you know, within the workshops, we can cover, you know, a lot of those aspects. And yeah, we can have 10 people. Yes, it's quite hectic, it's quite exciting. We certainly haven't got the time to print out the models of all 10 you know, during the workshop, but we do print out pieces for them and send it on to them as well. And you know, I think that's quite valuable. But we also have workshops about the importance of prototyping. You know, 3D printing, if you've got a desktop printer, that you know, if you can, at the earliest stage in your design process, to print out your concept and hand it maybe to a colleague or your client and sort of say, is this what you mean? And it means that there's less problems down the line of, you know, your client coming back to you and saying, but it's too big, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's important on the 3D printing side, you know, that you can now so easily and cheaply print 3D print objects at the earliest in that concept pathway.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, so we do have different types of workshops. Some of them are master classes for people who've already used our system for a while and they want to come back for get into it deeper. So yeah, it's I enjoy the teaching side. I really do.
Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And going into you know, a more generalized view of 3D printing, being a woman in a predominantly male field, did you face any obstacles in your journey into 3D printing?
I'm sure there were some. I'm sure there were actually probably quite a few. I must admit, I have found it difficult to get investment. And I think that could be because particularly in the whole software development area, it tends to be much so male dominated. Also coming from an arts background, I think that has probably been a bit of a barrier as well, because a lot of investors are looking actually to invest in maybe much more engineering products rather than the art side. So it's basically been, our projects has basically been self-financed by myself and Xiaoxing. Yeah, it's, yeah, I think there are issues still about women being accepted within certain areas. Certainly getting better, but I'm also now getting the ager side of it as well, which is a bit hard. You know, somebody, a woman that age, nah. So yeah, I do have some barriers to overcome, but I'm a very determined and pragmatic person, so I do get over it. Yeah.
I see.
And the last slide is about my book.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So this is where basically I put a lot of my knowledge about 3D digital designing, both 2D, 3D scanning, and all that sort of thing. And I put it in a book basically for artists and designer makers, you know, so that they had something that would really encourage them into the technologies.
Yeah.
So the book is basically about the digital crafts and the industrial technologies, and there's such a range of them now.
Yeah,
it really is.
That's
So
cool.
Did you want to talk about the color side?
Yes, I was about to get to that. One of my strongest beliefs in the 3D printing technology is it's very applicable to different fields. And I know that recently there have been some developments in the color side. So could you talk a little bit about some of these changes in recent years and how these changes have impacted some of your work?
My knowledge tends to come very much from using the commercial service companies, you know, like Shapeways, Sculpteo, iMaterialize, Oceans. There's one in London that's just changed its name. Yeah, so it's much more from that, you know, actually using those services. And going right back to, maybe when I first started using color, it was sandstone, and sandstone is really brittle. So now I've got one of my pieces here. I should show you what have I done with it. This one. So this one is sandstone, and I made it quite chunky so that it wouldn't break easily. But I have had some pieces that in sandstone that are broken. You know, you drop them and they just shatter, and that's not very good. But this is all 3D printed in color, so you know that came with the blue and the yellow printed like that. So I didn't do many pieces in you know using sandstone. Then a company called MCore, who were manufacturing a 3D printer printing in paper, they set up in Ireland, and I started working with them when they started introducing color into 3D printing in paper. One of the things we needed to make sure was that our format was compatible with color printing. And of course, the SDL format files don't hold color data.
Yeah.
So the format that we introduced into our program is VRML, VRML.
Okay. I see.
So that's the format that we save our 3D models in to have them printed in color.
Okay.
So I worked with Debs quite a bit because I really did want to be able to take design in color and get it 3D printed in color, because I was going to show you this. This is that bangle that I did right at the very beginning, and you can see it's got the bands that move.
Oh, wow.
But I painted it. It was white ABS, and so I basically painted it. The other side's different, very different.
Wow. That's very cool.
It's got gold leaf on it as well. So I was painting things to get the color. But I really liked the idea of being able to 3D print, and it would be in color.
Yeah.
So this is paper. Get this one. So this is earrings, and they were in 3D printed in paper. Fairly straightforward, just the red and the white. I've also got some other samples. I've got this one, which is, let's get it onto screen. It's blue and it's yellow.
Yeah.
And then I sort of got a little bit more complex. This one hasn't been varnished. Once you varnish it, the color then gets into a much more block color, rather than, you can see this one's got some white sort of markings on it. But that was 3D printed paper.
Wow.
And it's just really exciting.
It is, definitely.
Yeah. So, but again, you can't get detail. And this is a commission that I had. She's a beekeeper, and put it on maybe this side. Okay, so it's just for a beekeeper, and I wanted to 3D print it in color, but I didn't want anything that was going to break, and I also wanted something to get the details. And the service companies had brought in another 3D printer. I don't know who makes it, but it would 3D print in a polymer and 3D print in color in a polymer. So I had the first test piece done in this material. This is the test piece, and it worked fine. The bee was a little bit fragile. This bee here with the wings. How can we see that best? See the one with the wings?
Yeah.
The first one broke, basically.
Oh, okay.
So I then sort of strengthened it and 3D printed the final piece. And then out of that came that little brooch that I showed at the beginning, this one. And the two of us have done this piece because a percentage of this goes to, it's a group called Summerbus, and they've been in court in France to stop Monsanto and Bayer from selling the pesticides that kill pollinators. So a percentage of that little pin goes to those to that company to fight in court. So again, that was 3D printed in color.
Very interesting.
And it's got really nice subtleties in it. I just really like what's happening with the color. So is that my last color piece I've done? Oh, yes, I haven't got the brooch that was I showed you earlier on, because that's actually going to be in an exhibition in Romania in September. Wow. So to be able to use our program, our software, and then to be able to print or to be able to use color, really play around with color, and then to actually 3D print that, I just find really exciting. And so that's why I just so enjoy using our software. And that's why I enjoy coming back into doing jewelry. It's lovely. I'm very lucky.
Thank you so much for sharing your pieces. They're quite beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I think this concludes our conversation with Anne-Marie today. For more information about women in 3D printing, please visit our website or our LinkedIn page to learn more. And we hope to bring you more videos and talks about 3D printing in the weeks to come. And thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much. Okay.